Okay, we're going to welcome Bill Hellmuth, Chairman and CEO of HOK. Welcome, Bill.
Well, good to be here.
So, Bill, exciting year for you. Challenging, obviously. We're all facing 1 year of a pandemic, but this year, 2021, marks your 30th anniversary with HOK. A very exciting career with a great firm. I'd love to have you talk about, one of the 100 or so projects you've worked on, I guess spanning some 20 countries. Is there one, Bill, that sort of sticks out in your mind?
Well, there are lots of buildings that stick out. It's hard to just put your finger on just one. One of the things that's been terrific over that 30 years is the variety of projects that I've been able to work on. And when I came to HOK, I had worked with a different three-initial firm for about 12 years, and I only did spec office buildings in Midtown Manhattan. If I did something downtown, that was really exotic. I come to HOK, my first project is an eco hotel at the edge of the rainforest in Irian Jaya, where the neighbors are the people who ate Michael Rockefeller in 1962. You don't get a chance to do that. And I've had a chance to work from that to cities in Turkey where they were going to dig a new canal 15 miles to the west of the Bosphorus. Worked on a Buddhist temple, worked on airports, worked on everything in between. The couple that really stand out. One is the Udvar Hazy Center, which is the National Air and Space Museum Annex out at Dulles. The original museum on the mall opened at the HOK office when that was built, and clearly before my time. But the Udvar Hazy Center, which you can fit the entire existing Air and Space Museum on the mall inside the main exhibit hall of the Udvar Hazy, and it's got all the cool stuff. It's got the SR-71. It's got the Enola Gay all put together. It was never able to be all put together there. It's got the space shuttle and just some wonderful artifacts in there. Some very, very tall buildings, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company headquarters in Abu Dhabi, LEED Platinum building. But the thing that sticks with me the most is in my time in DC, I built about 30 buildings in Washington, DC proper, and the ability to help shape a city and have your buildings be a part of the fabric of that city, for me, that is really the most important stuff. That is, that's the most memorable. Sort of building that body of work and really taking a city, which I love, and helping move it forward. That's for me the most important.
Yeah, I would imagine there's only a handful of architects that can say that. I have a collection of 30 buildings that I was a part of. I mean, talk about leaving your mark on a district. That's
well, there have been a couple, people in DC over time, and it is a handful. You can name kind of who they are, and they had great careers. Happily, they were starting to retire when I showed up, which was sort of the perfect time.
So, Bill, that's the fun stuff. Let's get into the very difficult stuff, which is, being the head of a giant AE firm at a time when, there are government shutdowns, job site shutdowns, global pandemics. We don't know. A year ago, we thought everything was just gonna shut down. And so now we're 12 months later. Most AEC firms have learned to survive, and many even thrive during these very difficult times. I'd love to have you kind of jump into maybe the early days of the pandemic or midway through, and what are some of the sort of lessons or takeaways that you can bring to the table from those, leading HOK through a pandemic?
Well, first of all, it's in 2 weeks, it will be exactly a year since we sent everybody home. And had to work from home. No one's been able to come back into the offices. It's for, the onesie twosie kinds of things, but essentially everyone has been working from home that whole time. And it was scary. We didn't know what the heck was going to happen. We did know that right exactly at that moment, we had about a 15% drop in fee volume. We didn't know whether that was the beginning of a trend that was going to keep going or not. Happily, we had that drop, and then it leveled and got slightly better as it went up. But we didn't know that at the time. We thought, oh my gosh, anything can happen. And one of the things you learn is that when there are economic changes like that, the actions that you have to take in terms of right sizing and all those things, you're going to eventually have to make them anyway. If you make them sooner, it's better for everyone in the firm. Say, and I couldn't ever say, gee, we've done this and that's it, it's never going to happen again. You couldn't say that, but you did know that if you took some actions and you really kept things going, that it's better to do it, face the music early on, and then move on from there. So we've since then had areas of our firm which have expanded beautifully, some which have contracted, but on average, it's actually done very well. And we've had quite a good year artistically and financially. And we look back and we're thinking, wow, we didn't expect that. And it's really, for me, been an eye-opener. I know that 10 years ago, we could not have done this. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have an ability to do what we're doing right now, the very easy way of hooking up our video and having conversations and bringing people together. We just didn't have that 10 years ago, and now we do. And everyone has really sort of leaned in, took a lot of adjustment, but it's been great.
Yeah, we were obviously covering firms that were, and HOK was right in the mix of this. It might have been the first firm to really do it and build some sort of these operation centers where you can have those virtual collaboration meetings and coordination meetings across teams. But this really forced everyone to say, okay, now we're all virtual, clients, partners, internal, and how do you make it work? Are there lessons as a firm leader with kind of the company culture and how you continue to grow culturally through virtually, really through Zoom?
Well, you mentioned now we take them for granted. We did a project it's called KAUST, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. It was this enormous 5.5 million square foot university in Saudi. And we had 32 months from the day they said get started to the day they wanted to cut the ribbon. So we had to design it and get this incredibly complex science and technology university built in 32 months. And it was, King Abdullah wanted to see it in his lifetime, and he was getting up there in years. So there was a real timeline. In order to do it, we lashed 8 HOK offices together. And we started it with something called the Chasing the Sun charrette, which started in Hong Kong, then flipped to London, then flipped to New York, then St. Louis, then San Francisco, and then back to Hong Kong, and went around the world 3 times to have a charrette, which is a terrible way to design anything. But what it did do is it designed our team, and it taught our team how to work with each other. And out of that came the advanced collaboration rooms. We worked with the various Cisco at the time, their technologies and the telepresence technology we put together with another technology called Thunder. Today, we all have those on our laptop. It's the ability to sketch on something, look at a drawing, and talk to people. But we didn't have that in the years we were doing. We had to sort of invent them, and we had those in all of our offices. And so we got used to working virtually. But today, we're doing everything virtually. And I think, one of the silver linings of all of this is we rely on a lot of collaboration between the parts and pieces of HOK. We do all these different building types. Each one of them requires people who have specialized knowledge. If it's a laboratory, there are people who do just lab planning and lab layout and lab thinking. and we can bring those people in from some corner of HOK to work on a project. Well, prior to COVID, that usually meant you'd have a few things in the advanced collaboration room, but it also meant that person would fly to your office or you'd fly there and you'd work on things. Now the entire team is working through video. So we can pull people from anywhere. It's just a question of time zone, which is frankly the hardest thing to come over. And that's not all that tough because there are only 3 time zones in the US and then you get to Europe and so forth. Those are the really tough one is Hong Kong because they are exactly 12 hours difference and there's no convenient time to have, but still you do it at 8 in the morning, which is their 8 at night, or you reverse it. And that's how that works. But this, the whole collaborative process is really pretty terrific and resource leveling. If there's some project, if you need a project architect that can do a certain thing here in Washington, and there's someone who's got a little time on their hands in New York, you just glue them into the project and it's seamless. It wasn't seamless before, but again, because everyone's at the same level, it's pretty great.
Have you guys, I mean, you are involved in so many different building sectors. Are there a few that stand out as really strong opportunities for HOK? Obviously, we're looking at, we've been writing about cold storage facilities and data centers, and these are some of the particular building types that are in high demand these days. Is there a short list for HOK?
Well, frankly, the short list has everything to do with science and technology. Mm-hmm. 100 years ago, as a country, we made steel and we built things out of steel. We manufactured things. All of that has moved elsewhere. What do we do now? Now we have research and ideas and technology that pushes our country forward. Now we'll always have agriculture and all of those other things, but not just the technology in terms of what happens inside a computer and all of that, but also the technology of healthcare and the research that goes on. And that's really where our country is headed. And so that's where the architects are really a reflection of the markets that are out there. And I always talk about in Pittsburgh, one of the great steel cities in the world. The crowning building of Pittsburgh, the U.S. Steel Building, now says UPMC, which is University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And this has happened in city after city. The medical and the research that goes with the medical and the healthcare becomes the largest employer of people in that city, and that's their object building. The UPMC tower is that is sort of indicative of that. And so, the real areas that we see great expansion is laboratories, corporate campuses for tech, how to really sort of work through all of those kinds of projects and issues. And that's where I'm seeing the opportunities. The other next one is going to be infrastructure. We've got a long time. We haven't really done enough stuff with our airports. U.S. airports are just not the equal of the European airports. I mean, we're finishing up LaGuardia, which is going to be a terrific project. But the old LaGuardia, if you flew into a European city and it had an airport like that, you'd say, "Why have I come here?" It just was not. It had really gotten run down, mm-hmm. And we're seeing that in a lot of places around the U.S. So that kind of infrastructure is going to be particularly important and a good place to be working.
If we could circle back to leadership lessons, I'd love to have you maybe share your thoughts on lessons from past downturns. Obviously, you were there during the Great Recession of 2008 and the following economic hardships, 9/11, the dot-com bubble. I mean, are there any lessons from those past experiences that you're applying to HOK today?
Well, I think the first lesson that I think is really important is you need to be completely transparent. And you got to sort of tell people what's going on and tell them straight, because to get through something like this, you really have to have the trust of the people that are within your firm. And if you start shading the truth one way or the other, or sugarcoating something, they're going to see right through it because they know you too well. And so transparency is really, really important. And communication is important. You just communicate twice as much as you think you should. I mean, it's just really important. And at every level, at the offices, to have office meetings and have people get together and just talk about anything. And, we have these large Zoom meetings and you have to do some work at it. And you call up about 4 or 5 people ahead of time and you say, I want you to ask this question, or I want you to ask that, just to pepper the audience to get the conversation going. Ask some challenging question over here. And I can't tell you how important that is, because people can get, this one is different from all the other ones. People are isolated. And we're social animals, and they want to be connected to something that's larger than what's happening in their living room. And so the more you can do of that, the more transparent you are, the more you can do of that, the better off you're going to be. And if you've got terrific people, you're going to sail through and come out the other end in a terrific way.
What excites you right now in 2021? Like, what's one thing you guys are doing as an organization that you would put out there as, wow, this is really darn cool? You need to, other firms need to see what we're doing.
Well, there are a number of things, but one of the things that that's happening sort of right now, our structural engineering group have come up with some wonderful sort of real-time optimization tools that, working with the designer, again, the reason you want to be multidisciplinary is so you can take full advantage of the brain power of people within your organization to put that to task on a project. And these optimization tools, you can, in very short order, look at things at how can you span something in the very best possible way? How can you create a 3-dimensional truss that will do things that you can't do otherwise? A wonderful example of the beginning of this was we did these great enclosed structures at the north and south end of the Atlanta airport building. And working with that, there were only a few places that you could actually land these trusses, and there were only a couple of ways of putting them together, and they had to be prefabricated and so forth. But we were able to make these really beautiful, graceful structures by using this optimization tool. So it's the idea of the blend between architecture and engineering on structural optimization tools like that. I think our future, and it tied with sustainability, is how do we optimize the mechanical side of things? How do we work with our mechanical engineers, both in-house and out-house, to make buildings which will reach carbon neutrality in an easy way? That when I say nothing is easy, but the more you practice something and work with the experts in that field, the more natural it becomes, the less of a stretch to get to a very energy efficient building or to eventually get to carbon neutrality. If someone had told me 15 years ago that that the last 5 spec office buildings that we had done in DC would all be LEED Platinum, and these are buildings for developers for whom profit is the primary motive, and they're all LEED Platinum because we figured out with them how to get there, and they also saw it as a value add. And Washington is a city where that is a value add because of a lot of the clients that go into those buildings. And so really, I think it's those intersections between design and the engineering practice, bringing it together with all the other things. And that really, for me, is pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the secret sauce is kind of like the innovation culture that you guys have nurtured.
But it's the overlapping of the
Yeah.
different disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone once said all the great science discoveries have been made in the core disciplines. Everything that's going on now is what's happening in that overlapping, in the intersections of one core discipline and another, and where they overlap, and that's where the great discoveries are being made today. And so that's what I love to see.
Well, Bill, thank you for your time. I so appreciate it. Great stuff from HOK, and best of luck in 2021.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Good to see you.